Sporting Journal Radio, presented by Onyx.
That was another wild trip, Corey.
Yeah, we're pretty famous for that. Zero plans, just hit the road and go where the wind blows us.
So when you called me and said, hey, I want to do this turkey trip, and I want to do it in like the next week or two, I said, you're crazy. I said, there's no way I can go. And then I want to thank Dan, because without him helping out back home, I wouldn't have been able to go. But a week later, we were on the road headed south.
Yep.
The plan was like 4 states probably, and to try to kill something like 12 turkeys.
Yep.
And that's a pretty ambitious goal.
Yeah, it was definitely an ambitious goal. I mean, I try to shoot for the moon doing something like this, and we didn't shoot our 12 turkeys, but wasn't for the lack of effort, that's for sure.
Lots of effort. Well, we ran into a problem right away when the guy we were going to meet up with in Kansas had COVID.
Yeah. COVID detoured us from Kansas over to Missouri right away, so that was kind of where one state went. And
well, we started in Nebraska. We ended up
did start in Nebraska.
Going straight to Nebraska.
Yep. Went there kind of as a prelim scout hunt for a day, looked this east part of the state over, and we didn't find much in Nebraska.
No, it was tough, but it was a nice scouting mission at least, because we figured we'd probably end up there after Missouri anyway.
Yeah, right.
So we got to, I've never hunted turkeys in Nebraska. I had nowhere to go. It was all DIY stuff between public land, or we tried to knock on a few doors, and it's hard to get on private land, especially for turkeys in those states. I think they get asked a lot at some of those places.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of focused a lot of effort down that early part of the trip, down that southeastern part of the state, and I tell you what, we're driving around not seeing hardly any turkeys or hearing any turkeys at all. We were seeing raccoons all over the place. In every field, out during the daylight, in cornfields, chowing down. And when we'd find a couple turkeys here or there, try to get permission from the landowners would say, for the last 3 or 4 years, that turkey population's really gone downhill. We don't hardly see any of them anymore. And ground nest predators would be the culprit to that, in my opinion. I've never seen that many raccoons in one area before. And go to an area where there's supposed to be a lot of turkeys and there's hardly any at all, that kind of, it's pretty self-explanatory that the area, if I can kind of paint the picture a little bit, it's heavily farmed, heavy agriculture area with a lot of rolling hills, a lot of terraces, and then a lot of draws in those fields. The draws would have a creek running through them or a ditch, and then they would be wooded or grass along some of the creeks. And basically, from a hen's perspective, that's really the only place to nest, is in around those draws someplace. And that's where the coons live as well during the day. And then the coons are traveling up and down those draws. So basically, to have those eggs sit there for, if the hen were to lay an egg and wait till the egg hatches and then wait for that little chick to get big enough to fly up to even just the first limb, you're talking a time frame of like 6 weeks that little either egg or little tiny chick is on the ground. 6 weeks of exposure to all types of ground nest predators. It's just way too much exposure, and I'm fairly confident that there's no turkeys around there to really speak of, and no jakes. We didn't see any jakes. There's just no young turkeys, and they're just getting gobbled up before they can hatch, or just right after they've hatched. A little chicken nugget for a raccoon or coyote, possums, skunks. So I would say if I lived or hunted a lot in that area or all of Nebraska, I would have an extensive raccoon trap line,
yes,
and I would maintain the heck out of that thing.
I'd be curious what what would cause, if the raccoon population has always been that strong, and maybe there was just a couple years of bad hatches with turkeys, and those bad hatches were compounded by the large population of ground nest predators, and that's what's caused an even bigger decline in turkey numbers, or if there's been an increase in predators like that. I learned, I didn't do a lot of turkey hunting growing up, and there was a couple reasons for that. My family didn't turkey hunt a whole lot. I'll be honest, one of the reasons I didn't turkey hunt is because I'd always turn on outdoor television, Sportsman Channel or whatever, and I'd look for waterfowl shows, and it would just be turkey hunting, but whitetail bow hunting, okay, turkey hunting. And I got so sick of turkey hunting shows, and I was trying to find a waterfowl show that I would get mad.
There's a deer.
There's a deer. A couple deer right there. And then I got into turkey hunting. I saw the appeal to it. In the first year I went turkey hunting, I sat on a nest of a wood tick nest, and I had wood ticks everywhere, and I'm freaked out by Lyme disease. So, and then where I live in western Minnesota, the turkey population isn't doing as good, or we just don't have a good enough habitat for it, whatever the case may be. The turkeys we have get hunted pretty hard, and it's hard to get on ground. So I just haven't done it much. So that was one thing that this trip taught me, was just a lot about turkey behavior, and obviously how to be a better turkey hunter, but just a little bit about where they live, how they act, how they interact with each other, and how they interact with other species. So it's been
half a mile, turn left onto 150th Street.
The trip is almost over. We're almost there. It's been 8 days we've been on the road, and we've pretty much hunted every single day.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see how many miles we have walked. I bet you it's a solid 40 per person, if not even more than that, because it's, for sure been over 5 miles a day.
We put on a lot of miles in a lot of really cool country, and I hadn't been in that part of Missouri before, and I hadn't met Joe Harris before. He's a pretty good guy. Yeah,
he's awesome. He opened up all of his turkey connections for us. It was a great time running the woods with him and seeing some different styles and different techniques of turkey hunting.
He's got a pretty cool business where he builds floating blinds for waterfowl hunters, which I'm going to have to put one of those in my backyard.
Absolutely. Everyone needs one.
Blind spot outdoors. It's some pretty cool stuff. We went on, now I'm not going to say it's one of my most memorable turkey hunts, because I only have a handful of turkey hunts in total, but I'm going to say it's going to be one of my more memorable hunts of anything, probably in a thunderstorm.
Yeah. That got pretty western pretty quick.
Yeah. It did. How have you ever hunted? A lot of people ask, how do you hunt turkeys in the rain, and what do you tell them when they ask you that?
Probably go home, wait for it to quit raining, and then get them right after the rain. They should be fired up if the sun comes out. But we fortunately had a bunch of thunder and lightning close by, and so the turkeys would gobble every time it would thunder. So we knew where the turkeys were at, and for the most part they were pretty quiet other than that thunderstorm come through. So it actually worked out to our advantage. We were able to locate a couple birds and put a very interesting stalk and sneak on a group of unsuspecting turkeys along that creek.
If I remember right, we were actually going to take a break, I think, to avoid the rain, and then we were sitting there in the field talking or whatever, and then we closed a truck door.
Yep.
And we heard a gobble. We all looked at each other and like, well, here we go.
Let's do it.
And it started pouring, and the next thing you know, we were sneaking through that creek, and the water was coming up in the creek, the current was picking up, and at one point we were walking through like waist deep water.
Waist deep, yeah.
Man, and we were just paralleling those birds for a little while.
Yep.
But we didn't get them.
It was close.
It was real close. But
I had filled the tag, so I was the cameraman, and I was staying back a little ways. Bret and Joe were creeping forward while they went left. The turkeys went right. I, with the camera, was actually the closest to the turkeys and had them two toms in range, while these guys were about 80 yards away from them and didn't see them. So lo and behold, cameras are just bad luck most of the time.
There was a recurring theme along every day of this trip, all 8 days, and that was Cory should have a gun in his hands at all times.
I think I could pretty much end world hunger if I did that. Like a one-man wrecking ball in the natural resources of...
God dang. So what I learned the most, though, while I was in Missouri, and this may be the most important aspect to this trip, is Joe had his lab with June, and he'd let her get out and run a little bit when we'd be done turkey hunting, getting ready to drive to the next spot. He'd let her run out and get some exercise he had her with. And she'd come back to the truck covered in ticks. And we wore the Sitka stuff with the insect guard.
Yep,
insect shield.
Insect guard.
Insect guard.
The Equinox Guard hoodie and pants that has a chemical baked into the fabric, and it has a couple other tick preventatives worked into the clothing. So basically this stuff is as anti-tick and anti-mosquito as you can get, and we put it to the test with all those miles that we walked in tick country, tick habitat, and did not have a single one on us the whole time.
Not one in 8 days of hunting hard, crawling, sitting, kneeling, walking, and like I said, every time that dog was outside, she had ticks all over her.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. Like hands down, I can't believe it, because ticks freak me out. And down there, I saw my first Lone Star tick, and that's the little one. It looked like our wood ticks up north, only just a white dot in the middle of the back. And those are the ones that mean you'll never eat a steak again in your life. So like Lyme disease freaks me out, but not being able to red meat really freaks me out.
Yeah, the red meat allergy that you can get from that Lone Star tick, not good. I know someone that had that for a while. Big life changes if you have to cut red meat out of your diet completely. So scares the heck out of me, that's for sure.
Well, we got to spend a few days at Joe's. Joe, thank you very much, by the way. Cory's like, yeah, we're going to go on this trip. We're going to hit 4 states. We're going to shoot a bunch of turkeys. I'm going to bring a tent. We'll just camp the whole time. So I'm all prepared for sleeping outside in a tent this whole trip. And we get to Joe's. He had a nice place for us.
Yeah, I had a giant fifth wheel camper in a shed for us. Here you go. Here's your guys' turkey camp. Like, well, this couldn't have worked out any better.
Thank you very much. Of course, we ate really well. Cory brought all kinds of stuff for us to eat and cooked all the time. Thank you very much.
Well, I hunt so I can go hunting some more. So that's what we ate, was all the stuff that I had shot and processed in previous hunting trips. So that's why I hunt, is just so I can keep hunting and keep eating while I'm hunting.
We ate snow goose, mallard,
salmon, whitetail, Canada goose.
I don't think we ate any of the turkey.
We did not. You didn't cook up any of the turkey. Saving that for turkey pot pie, my wife's specialty.
Saving that for the next hunting trip.
The next hunting trip, absolutely.
So then we spent a couple of days in Missouri and then decided to go back to Nebraska and hunted some of just some really cool country in Nebraska.
Oh,
went to a completely different part. Actually, we started back in the southeast again, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Started back there and struggled.
You know why we went back there, though? Because we saw those 2 toms when we were there the first time, couldn't get on the land. And it would have been the easiest 2 turkeys.
Slam dunk.
The whole trip.
Tags would have been filled.
We sat there staring at them at about 25 yards away while we were in the car trying to get permission, and couldn't get permission on them. And then left the state. 3 days later, you got permission over the phone. Finally tracked down the landowner. He said, yeah, go ahead. Which if you'd have said that 3 days earlier, we would have been golden. So we go back there, tried to hunt them, and spent more time searching for oil.
Yeah, that took a pretty interesting turn really fast, because this guy that the neighboring landowner saw us drive by with out-of-state plates, so he sees us drive by, and we heard that he was some anti-hunter or whatever, and he had a pretty interesting farmyard with like a lifetime of collection of stuff everywhere, so we knew he was a little bit of a goofy dude. he comes whipping out of the driveway with some crusty old minivan and tracks us down because we were slow rolling by his property trying to find these two toms. We just needed to spot them and locate them while he tracks us down. And what are you guys doing around here? Oh, we're just looking for some turkeys. Are you looking for oil? No, we're not looking for oil, I guess. Well, do you want to see some? I got oil on this property down here. It's coming out of the ground. Do you guys know anyone that is in the oil industry? You want to come take a look at it? And we're like, well, if we go walking through there and the turkeys happen to be there, well, then we'll probably, looking for oil, then we'll probably bump the turkeys down to the land that we can hunt. So I'm like, yeah, let's go walk this guy's land with him and look for turkeys. Well, we were looking for turkeys. He was showing us all the oil.
All the oil. I mean, he was a nice guy. It took 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, like all day.
Our day.
Oh my gosh.
To find oil. So if you're in the oil business, he said he'd give us some money if they start drilling oil. If you guys give me an oil guy to come drill here, I'll give you some money. So if you drill for oil, let us know.
We got that going for us.
But the most interesting part of the trip had to be when it was one of the last days of the trip, and we split up on this public piece of property, and all of a sudden I catch some movement. I'm sitting up on this high hill. I catch some movement, and I glass, and I see he's kind of a ways off, so I can't really tell what I'm looking at. And I look. That's not what I just saw. I look again, and it's a guy running dogs with a longbow, and it looks like he just has a big, long overcoat on. I can't figure out what I'm looking at, like, what's going on here. And so I text Cory, and I'm like, hey, there's another hunter here. He's got dogs and a longbow.
I was like, are you sure it's not a walking stick? Is he just out walking his dogs? And he's like, I don't know. He wasn't carrying it like a walking stick. He was kind of carrying it like a longbow.
Looked like a longbow to me. And so when we get done hunting that day, we're parked in the same lot. He comes back in and walks up, and sure enough, here comes this guy with a longbow and 2 dogs and a kilt.
A kilt and lots of wool and a backpack.
Well, when you say lots of wool, I mean, well, yeah, there was lots of wool, but there was one section of the body that didn't have anything on it. So we ended up talking to him. He was a really interesting guy. He was out there doing some research too. He's a master naturalist. His name was Parsifal, and he's actually going to be on the show. We actually sat there and interviewed him and talked to him, and I asked him a question about wearing a kilt with nothing underneath it while you're deer hunting, turkey hunting, whatever, walking through the woods. And well, I'll just wait for him to answer that question for you, because you got to be a little bit. You got to be a little careful.
You know, Parsifal isn't trespassing because he's not going to climb. He's not going to cross any barbed wire fences with a kilt on.
Man.
Oh.
Well,
hey Bret, have you ever seen anyone wearing a kilt, shooting a longbow, hunting turkeys with 2 dogs?
Well, as a matter of fact, Cory Loeffler, yes, I have.
You guys are going to want to catch this. Stay tuned. We got something for you.
You know, one really cool thing about how we found spots to hunt in Cory was what you did as we were driving down. You said, hey, can we, because you taught me something too about scouting for turkeys. You want to find big tracts of woods, you know, big timber. And you were like, hey, can we do that with the OnX app somehow? And you figured it out.
Yeah, I turned it's more deer hunting layers designed probably for deer hunters to find out different types of trees in the area, but I just turned on all of the woods and forest layers and then zoomed out a little ways on the map so that only the big tracts of timber showed up in bright red blocks on the map, and then we focused our attention on big tracts of timber. And if to go back to the ground nest predator thing, the big tract of timber basically just gives the hens more square miles or square footage to nest in that isn't as heavily populated with the ground nest predators. They can hide a little bit easier, so that's why there was turkeys in those areas.
It worked out great because we ended up finding some big pieces. Then we kind of cross-reference that with pieces that were public, pieces that were private. We knocked on a couple of doors. We did get some access to land. We got a whole lot of no's. And that's just, I think, because they get, some of those guys just get asked constantly. I think, didn't somebody say they got asked 5 times already that week? Or something like that. But it definitely was a huge help for us. And then you shot a couple of turkeys, all with the 410.
Yeah, you bet.
That last one, tell us about shooting that last one on public land.
Well, we had chased this one gobbler in the morning. I'm pretty sure we heard him the night before, put him to bed. We got in there early that next morning. We had him close, just right over a ridge, probably within 80 yards of the gun barrel or so. And he was with the hen. He was gobbling like crazy, and then got spooked, heard something, and he ended up taking off down the hill. And then I heard him gobble way down in the bottom. And then a little while later, saw a turkey up on another knob with a hen that was the same direction that he was traveling. And I just made a beeline for him. I knew he was going to be up there, so I checked out the Onyx map. I planned a route to there, and ran into that crazy school bus that was upside down in the ditch. While I was on my way, I was like, okay, I got to check this out. Dropped a pin on the school bus, headed back into the woods, up the hill. He had just made it over to the next knob. I was kind of dog trailing him a little bit, and got in pretty close to him, hit the call. He responded to that, saw the decoy, and he just immediately turned around, turned his attention on that decoy, and then just came right back. So he was one knob over from me basically, and turned around and drug that hen with him, and then came up the hill. Just textbook, probably hill country Nebraska turkey hunt, that big old strutter coming up over the hill. And oh man, I was excited. I got some of it on film, and then I had to get to fill and tag, so I dropped the phone and camera and picked up the 410, and I let him have it at about 12 yards or so, and it was pretty awesome.
That's one thing I also learned about running and gunning for turkeys, is it's really hard to film it. We struggle a little bit with filming the turkeys when they would come in.
They have just such good eyesight, and if you're not set up in a blind, it's extremely difficult to get the cameraman hid in a place where you can hide this big black colored lens, and the camera guy's usually the one moving the most, and they can pick out the slightest amount of movement from so far away. And any one little thing, we're hunting public land, these birds are extremely pressured. We saw a ton of different hunters there, so any one little tiny thing that they see wrong with the situation or setup, they're just going to turn right around and just head out the other way. And we saw that happened a lot.
That's one of the reasons you probably like turkey hunting, isn't it? The challenge of it.
The challenge, yeah. I mean, it's just so addicting to go out there and get your butt kicked over and over again, and then finally find some success or get really close. And I love the chase. I love those birds. I love eating them. I love the chase, and I love eating them more so than I like shooting them. I don't like shooting them that much, but you got to shoot them if you want to eat them. So, got some turkey pot pie coming up in my near future. I'm pretty excited to get home, cook some of that.
You like talking to them though too, I bet.
Yeah, my favorite part is probably picking fights with hens, getting a real vocal hen and picking a fight with her, and then like hearing what I would consider swear words coming out of her mouth, chewing me out for something. And that's probably some of my favorite stuff. But the hens that we ran into on this trip were very quiet and couldn't really get a rise out of any of them. So like getting a gobbler to gobble, well, you could honk your car horn, you could slam a door, you could blow a crane call, you could blow an owl hooter, a bunch of different things to get a response out of a gobbler. But those hens, when you really get into the down and dirty speaking turkey language to them, and you start hearing some of the 4-letter words coming out of their mouth, that is some fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, it was another epic trip. I know you can't just throw that word around, but it was pretty wild. Got to see some really cool things, meet some interesting people, and just spend a week outside hunting. Yeah. Which last question is what differences did you notice between birds back home in Minnesota versus birds down south?
The gobblers shut up or quit gobbling really early. This morning, there was turkeys in the area, and they were almost non-vocal at all. And yesterday they were done gobbling at 6:42 in the morning. Is about
like
the last
10
time.
minutes after sunrise.
Oh yeah, it's the sun hasn't even hardly came up yet, and they were done. So yes, I mean it was just constant learning something new, a new thing that you had to do. It yesterday. What we found out is, like, when you hear a gobble, you have to get there as fast as you can, as quiet as you can, without getting detected, and try and get a response out of that bird. Otherwise he's just going to quit gobbling. So, chasing public land birds, they quit gobbling pretty early. You have to make moves fast. You have to think on the fly. And I just loved the hill country, and up and down the hills. You get down in some of those bottoms and the ravines, and you can't hear anything, and you get up on top and you can hear gobbles all over. And back home it is flat as a pancake, which has its own benefits and difficulties as well. But I don't know, hunting turkeys on flat ground just definitely isn't as exciting as hunting them in hill country, just because of the way you can use the terrain, and you have to plan a route with onX to get from point A to point B, and it might be you have to walk 1.5 miles around them or something like that to get to the spot that you need to get to. But there's always that option, that availability. So I loved it. I've only hunted turkeys in a couple other states, and this was a bunch of new stuff for me as well, and learned a whole bunch on the trip, and it was a blast. I appreciate you coming with on moment's notice. And
yeah, I'm glad it worked out. It was awesome, and we need to plan another one, and somehow we need to work Art Diaz into that one too, because we stop and see him every time we do this, so he'll have to be a part of the next one.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
Hear more at sportingjournalradio.com or wherever you get podcasts. 852 million acres of public land, 147 million private properties, all in the palm of your hand. The #1 hunting GPS app just got better. With hundreds of custom map layers, 3D and topographic maps, you can easily scout on the road or at home before you go. And now you can get important weather details, CWD detection, and even know what crops have been planted where. Get the most trusted hunting GPS app ever made. onX. Know where you stand with onX.